Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Jason Calacanis with us. Jason, thanks for coming on the program.
My pleasure. Growth hacking and growth in general is a topic I'm getting very absorbed with.
You should be.
Yes.
So, Jason, since you've been involved in so much in the startup space and you've done so much, it's hard to know.
20 years now.
20 years, you said?
Over 20 years as an entrepreneur. I started in my early 20s. So, yeah, 20 years now. I'm 42.
Yeah.
20
Wow.
years exactly as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and it makes it hard to know where to even begin because you have so much knowledge, so much to share. So what I decided to do was I want to walk through some of the highlights in your career that really relate specifically to growth. I know you have a lot of stuff to share about all the other aspects of startups, but let's focus on growth. Let's start with
Sure.
Weblogs Inc. For the people that don't know, what were some of the huge blogs within Weblogs Inc.?
Clearly, Engadget, Autoblog, and Joystick were the three biggest. But right behind those were things like TV Squad and Cinematical. And Joystick also wound up having maybe 20 offshoots, and then Engadget also had offshoots as well. So we did China, Japan, and a bunch of other countries, and we also did Engadget, just about televisions and HD, and for a period. So we did brand extensions, but the three that are still rocking over at AOL are Engadget, Autoblog, and Joystick.
Yeah, and how much did you ultimately sell Weblogs Inc. for?
Not allowed to say, but the reports are $30 million, and I would feel pretty. I'm fine with people saying that number and putting
Gotcha. Yeah, it's out there on the internet, so I didn't know it was still under NDA or something.
I don't know what the statute of limitations is. I'm technically not allowed to talk about the terms of the deal, but the whisper number, as it were, was $30 million, which not bad for an 18, 20-month-old business.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that a little bit.
I had $10,000 left in my bank account and just proposed to my wife and was living in a really crummy two-bedroom in Santa Monica.
Mm-hmm.
It was a godsend. It was great manna from heaven.
Yeah, and those are the best stories. But let's talk about part of the success of that. One of the things you did exceptionally well was you were good at building brands. Some of those blogs you just mentioned, Engadget, those are not just blogs, they're brands. How important is a brand to an internet company? And I ask because we all know brands are important in the old economy. We know Coca-Cola needs a brand. We know Mercedes needs a brand. Do internet companies need brands, or do they just need value? What do you think?
You need both, clearly. There are plenty of companies that have provided massive value and had not great branding, or and they did okay. I kind of think branding is paramount in the early days, and it can start you off on first or second base. It doesn't solve the whole problem. Listen, you can have a beautiful brand that absolutely is gorgeous. Like Color.com was what a great name. Apple.com, Color.com, Square.com, Inside.com. These are great, Mahalo.com. These are 5 or 6 character, evocative, suggestive names that really are very powerful. But Color didn't work out because there was no brand value there, right? Mm-hmm. And if you called Square Merchant Services Info Systems, nobody would know what it was, right? So if you'd used a very literal name, Merchant Services Info Systems, it might be more accurate, but it wouldn't have been as evocative and beautiful and memorable, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of work that you can do with a brand to, again, start your company at first or second base, where Gawker was a great example of that. Mm-hmm. Gawking at something, people knew what that was, but nobody ever said, well, what would a person who gawks often be called? And it's a gawker, right? Mm-hmm. And, once people did sort of make that connection, it was great. Mahalo had a great brand too, because maybe 25% of people I would meet had been to Hawaii and knew what it meant. Others just thought Mahalo, they couldn't pronounce it, whatever, but they liked the ring to it. Is that Hawaiian? And then their friends would be like, yeah, you're an idiot. You don't know that means thank you in Hawaiian. So I love names that have a discoverability to them. Like, I didn't know what it was, but then when I found out, I got a payoff, right? So I would constantly, to this day, get people who take pictures of garbage cans or signs in Hawaii and say, look, mahalo, a trash can. And they're thanking you for throwing your trash out. And I actually own another Hawaiian named Kokua, and that means to help. And so And I own the domain name 20.com and annotated.com. So I've collected names over the years that I like to put to work, and Inside was the latest. But branding is absolutely paramount. Your brand needs to stand for something, or it stands for nothing, is what I tend to tell people. And so you have to decide early on, what does your brand stand for?
Yeah.
And Engadget was insidery, no BS, and the credit goes to Peter Rojas, not me, because he named it. I was just part of that process of building the brand. But yeah, the brand needs to speak to people. It needs to be evocative, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you've talked a lot about the naming conventions. What else is kind of on that subconscious checklist that's going through your mind as you think about a brand? Because it's a name, but it's more than that. Is there anything that you're thinking about there?
There's lots of different strategies for branding. I mean, you can be literal, and you can tell people, this brand stands for this very simple thing, cars.com. It's about cars, right? And you can do things like Square that are evocative of something, like the Square little device that goes on the top of it, right? So there was, interesting kind of, discovery when you have it. I think faking it till you make it is probably the best advice. So people get caught up in not having the domain name, but Delicious had del.iouo.us or whatever, and then they eventually bought delicious.com for $1 million or $500,000 or something. So you can fake it till you make it. A lot of people are doing like, oh, well, my app is, Sunrise, but I couldn't get sunrise.com, so it's sunriseapp.com, or it's Get Sunrise or Go Sunrise. Yeah. So there's this sort of freeing thing that's happened with apps, and that naming sort of rebooted. You can, reboot all your naming conventions. But I think simplicity, ability to spell it, ability to say it. I mean, I'm constantly meeting with entrepreneurs from outside the United States, and it's amazing, like, the whole concept of branding in other countries is terrible. So, like, I meet these Israeli startups every year at a Yossi Vardi breakfast, and it's sort of funny because they have incredible execution, they have incredible technology, great ideas, driven founders, and terrible names. Then I meet folks who have incredible names in the United States, and I'm like, wow, where did you get that domain name? Or how did you, that's a great brand name. And then they just don't have great execution or technology. So it's not just one thing, but it's an important thing.
Yeah. Now let's go to Mahalo. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Mahalo, your human-powered search engine,
Yep.
It eventually faltered because of Google's changing the algorithm.
Sure.
You couldn't get the Google juice. You weren't getting the traffic. Is the lesson learned there that SEO has to be supplemental to the business and not at the core? Is that what you walk away thinking, or is that the wrong lesson to learn from Mahalo?
Just got a little tea, don't worry. And look on the cup, be the brand.
There you go.
Yeah, listen, we got to 17 million uniques and $10 million in run rate at the peak and had 100 employees building content. That content, some of it was absolutely extraordinary and still ranked number one on Google. But Google at a certain point decided they wanted to be in the content business. And you see they're doing YouTube Music Awards, or they bought Zagat, and they started putting one boxes on top. So anytime you have a dependency from a traffic source, it's a risk. And a bunch of people, like Associated Content, sold right before the Panda update. They timed it perfectly. We didn't sell. We were still growing. And eHow went public. And so a lot of people rode that wave. eHow is still a very large business, but it's has no growth potential. So yes, you can be too dependent on a traffic source. Absolutely. I think SEO, if you listened and believed Google and Matt Cutts when he said, listen, we're partners, we're net, we send traffic to, you're laughing now.
I know, I'm laughing.
When he was saying, listen, and Larry and Sergey were saying, we are sending more traffic to people, we are not in competition with you, put our ads on your site, and we're going to win together. And, behave yourselves and SEO will be fine, and we'll give you guidance, but don't go over the top. So two things happened. It worked really well for a long time, and then people started getting very big. And then people, everybody always cut corners and did a little gray hat stuff on the edges. I'm going to do 7 different ways on how to make apple pie. But content was being invested in very heavily. And then Google decided, we want to be in the content business. So while they claim they never changed organic search, they did say none of these sites can get too much traffic. So they basically, it was like saying, hey, here's a city, and there's 100-story buildings like Mahalo or eHow or Associated Content or HubSpot. Let's say the new city limit is 50 stories high. Well, then they just cut the buildings in half, which is a very brutal thing to do to their partners, which is why I won't partner with that company anymore, and I'm very cautious about Google. Doesn't mean I don't love the products. I mean, I'm sitting here with an Android phone. I love Google's products. I love their, I love a lot of people there. I have a lot of friends there. But I would be very careful about partnering with them again, because what they did is they studied all the content out there. They figured out which content monetized best. And then they went on a systematic program to take over those verticals. So they said, oh, sports a comparison shopping engine is important. Let's take the comparison shopping engines out of the search engines. Let's penalize them. So the punitive forces to move them down in the search rankings and then put their own content above them.
Yeah.
Now, Matt Cutts goes out and lies through his teeth and says organic search has not changed. Search has changed. It's moved 400 pixels down the page and taken over all the space above it, which is 90% of the clicks. So he's lying. But he's truthful in saying that the organic search down at the bottom, 400 pixels, hasn't changed. And some governments, like the U.S. government, have fallen for that argument. Other governments, like in the EU, have not fallen for that. Now, I'm not a government interventionist. I think the free market will sort this all out over time. But they took the shopping vertical. Then they took the travel vertical. Then they moved Yelp down the page and took the local vertical. Then they took the content vertical. And the design now, where you see content from the Wikipedia next to search results, is the exact photocopy of Mahalo's innovations 5 years earlier. So, listen, I'm into competition. If they beat us fair and square, that's fine. But I do think that they lied to us and to everybody involved with them. And then you see it happening all over again with YouTube, where they said, oh, we want the MCNs, the multi-channel networks, to be our partners. They grow these things. And the MCN said, great, we'll work really hard for you. And here's our innovation. So Maker and Machinima came up with great innovations. We'll put artists together. We'll package them to advertisers. We'll create tentpole events. And we'll get them to cross-link to each other. And this will create this network effect and grow the audience. And everybody will make more money and grow. And then Google said, wow, that's a great idea. And YouTube stole it. And they did Comedy Week, and they did Geek Week, and now they just did the Music Awards. What do they do in each one of those tentpole events? They got a group of stars together. They packaged them to exchange traffic and build subscribers and whip them around, and they packaged it to advertisers. And so the MCNs are going to be the next Mahalos and eHouse. They'll be the next group of people who Google partnered with and then killed.
Yeah.
And the writing's on the wall.
Yeah.
So the overall thing for me is don't be dependent on one source. And nobody could have predicted, I think, that Google would flip their entire position and say, we want to be your biggest supporters. Use our ad network. We'll send you traffic. It's all good. And Matt Cutts, friend for a decade, just told me everything's okay, and then absolutely cut the rug out from under you. And I had to lay off 90 people. 90 people lost their jobs because of this. So I'm not pulling like, America Jobs thing, but there is something to be said for how you treat your partners speaks volumes for yourself. And in my essay, Google wins everything, I think Google has to think, instead of how do I 10x winning everything, this moonshots goal, maybe what's a 10x way to build sustainable partnerships? Unless they think that the best strategy, and there's a chance this could be true, maybe their best strategy is to take over everything and win everything. By the New York Times, eventually by the Washington Post, from Jeff Bezos, or whatever. Have some master plan that's even more onerous than what I'm saying. But, I'm building Inside.com right now, and I've built it on the three pillars that Google does not have control over.
What are those?
So those are email, mobile, and social. And if you look at the sites that are doing well today, they're the ones that route around Google. So Follow, Suite 101, all these sites, are having a really hard time because Google's got their, heel on their throats. But BuzzFeed, Gawker, Huffington Post, they're growing. Why are they growing? Mobile and social. Those are mobile. They have incredible mobile apps, and they're very sticky and designed well for mobile. Like BuzzFeed's mobile app is incredible. And they use social. And interestingly, those people will not let Google's ads on their site. So the savvy publisher is saying, not only will we not rely on Google for our traffic, we're not going to rely on Google for our money. So Nick Denton really was way ahead of his time with Gawker, where he told me, Jason, I'll never let them, they're the fox in the henhouse. He was right, I was wrong. So the lesson being of Mahalo or any of the SEO businesses is don't focus on that. Every hour you spend on that is an hour you're not working on your core vision. So say SEO is dead. I said that 5 years ago. Get away from SEO and focus just on the core product and making really valuable stuff. And the channels direct relationships with customers, because YouTube, when you get a subscriber, you don't have their email. So I was meeting with somebody who had a top 100 channel yesterday, and I said, how many emails? He said, none. I said, great, get a MailChimp account, and for your next video, say, I'm doing a 10-part video series on this topic, which is incredible. and I'm only going to give it to my super fans. Sign up at jasonnation.com, and you'll get these emails that you can only get there, and you'll grow your email list.
Mm-hmm.
We did that with some of our YouTube channels, and we started seeing 2 or 3% of our total number of subscribers convert over.
Mm-hmm.
So over a year, you might be able to move over 25% or 50%, who knows? And then if you do that, you don't even need YouTube anymore because you have a direct relationship with customers. Direct relationship with customers, as represented by email addresses, is the height of growth.
Okay, is there any better direct relationship than an email address? Is that the pinnacle of one-to-one communication?
Credit card relationship. What in iTunes is more powerful. What Amazon has is more powerful. So when you have the credit card on file and you can one-click bill or 1 or 2-click bill, credit card on file is a even higher version of that.
Yeah, so credit card number 1, email number 2.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at somebody like Amazon, or Apple, you can see their amazing power. I mean, if Apple or Amazon wanted to make a PayPal killer, they could do it tomorrow. I don't know why they haven't. I speculated a couple of years ago that would be the perfect thing for Apple to do, payments.
Yeah.
So it's on a slower timeline than I would have been.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the launch festival. You've probably seen more demos than any 2 humans combined. You've seen your share of demos. Has this exposure allowed you to pattern match?
Yeah, it has. I mean, I'd say Paul Graham from Y Combinator and David Cohen from TechStars have probably seen something similar, which is 500 or so a year. Mm-hmm. I have the pattern matching down. I mean, I see the good, I see the bad, I see the mistakes, I see the promise, and I think my signaling's getting better. Of course, like many things, like growth hacking itself and marketing, it's not a static industry or discipline. It's dynamic. So what worked 2 years ago does not work now, and so you have to be very careful if your signal processing is based on what you learned 2 or 3 years ago versus what's changed in the marketplace now. So you brought up SEO before. Listen, 6, 7, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, having a great SEO strategy is what built Weblogs Inc. to prominence. I mean, half of our traffic, 2/3 of our traffic on some of the blogs came from, SEO, and some percentage of those converted into subscribers and into RSS subscribers back then. I wish we had their email addresses instead of their RSS. That would have been more powerful, right? Mm-hmm. So get that main point, collect email addresses. So anyway, I do think your signal processing does get refined over time, yes, but it is a very dynamic industry. Things change quickly. And the nature of marketing is it has a shelf life. So there's a half to any marketing technique. If SEO is a marketing technique, every year it becomes half as valuable after people have discovered it. And that's when we hit peak SEO with eHow, and then it got cut in half and cut in half and cut in half. We might be at peak social right now. Maybe there's just too many kitten listicles and nonsense, and people will burn out to that, right? Mm-hmm. And you see somebody came out yesterday with a Chrome extension that removes any mention of Snowden or any mention of Justin Bieber from your Twitter feed and puts in something else, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that might be a sign of peak social, right? So the things change. You have to be able to find new things, and that's what growth hacking to me is about, is finding the new marketing technique and hammering it and hammering it and hammering it and wringing every ounce of value out of it before other people figure it out.
Yeah. What signals are you taking advantage of now when you hear them in demos? Are they the email, mobile, social, or are there other signals that when you hear them on stage, you get excited?
Yeah, I wouldn't say techniques and tactics get me excited with a startup. Techniques and tactics change. And so, that's not really important in selecting who you're going to invest in. What's important in selecting who you're going to invest in is who do you want to spend the next 5 and 10 years building a company with, who is got the resiliency, the grit, and the chutzpah to take on a huge problem and not give up. So for me, I'm looking for that. Mm-hmm. I'm looking for a person who will, never say die. And Travis Kalanick, from Uber is the perfect example. I knew him when he did Scour, which was a P2P search engine like Napster, except it was much more innovative, and he did Red Swoosh, and then he did Uber. Those first 2 companies absolutely got their asses handed to them on multiple occasions. And he spent 10 years fighting in the jungle, and now he's a genius, right? Mm-hmm. Elon Musk is a friend, and he had a rough go with PayPal. That company almost went out of business. He was ousted from PayPal by his teammates, and there's big differences there. Tesla almost went out of business, and he spent his 10 years in the jungle, fighting for survival, like POW behind enemy lines, not making light of the experience of POWs, but all respect to them, but the hardship of failure in entrepreneurship and getting beat up and the tenacity to keep going is what I optimize for. That's what I'm for. And so I've had investments where the person's like, yeah, we're running out of money, or we ran out of money, we didn't tell you, and we're giving up. And I'm just like, wow, the mistake I made there was I was too focused on the product or the tactics and not focused enough on the person, right?
Yeah.
And the market and the problem.
Yeah.
With Uber, people could say like the problem of getting a taxi is not important, and that might be true, but really the product has become so much more than that. And the entrepreneurs, Gary Camp, who co-founded it with Travis, are so resilient, brilliant, hardworking, never say die individuals. I'm so proud to be associated with it. I can take absolutely zero credit for it, other than just being friends with Travis, and him being nice enough to let me invest. But boy, what a ride it is, and what a privilege and honor it is to watch those teams crush it like they are.
Yeah.
And so optimizing angel investing for me, and listen, I'm new at it, I may be wrong, is really about the individual and the size of the problem they're tackling and their grit and resolve to stick with it, because there will be an opportunity. They will figure it out, and unless they give up, right? And so I think my investors in Mahalo, which is now Inside.com, Mahalo still exists as a product, still makes a decent amount of money, but I stopped investing because I don't think it's got a future with with Google's sort of anti-competitive, anti-partnership kind of problems. So, but my investors, I hope, will be very rewarded for picking me because of my resilience, not because of the original idea.
Gotcha. Now, this next question you may not answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Growth and influence are deeply connected, and you're a very influential person. And on your podcast, This Week in Startups, one time you talked about Michael Arrington, and you said that you taught him a lot about influence, about building a platform and really affecting the masses. What did you tell him? What is it? What are the Cliff Notes version of what you told him to have influence at that level?
Well, I told him, once you have the power, once you have the status, using it and abusing it is not a great idea. Being the elder statesman, having class and, being deft in how you deploy it is of critical importance. So when we were partners on TechCrunch 50, I was always, because I was already successful and very notable and known at that time, I said to him, listen, you're in the Time 100. You've done very well for yourself. Now is the time to switch gears. You don't have to fight with everybody. You don't have to attack people constantly. And you don't have to do this backdoor dealing kind of stuff. Just be the elder statesman and be highly ethical and treat people extremely well. He didn't treat people very well. And, over time, what we've seen is even his very close associates, whether it's Sarah from Daily or Paul Carr from Not Safe for Work or myself, just the whole line of people who are very close to him and were friends with him, he's just absolutely, fought with and demolished. And whatever the issues are in his personal life, we'll see how those lawsuits, wind up. It's pretty horrible stuff. And when we were in partnership with the TechCrunch 50, I was constantly trying to rein him in from doing favors and corrupting the process of selecting a winner. Mm-hmm. He always wanted to do favors for people. He always wanted to say, like, I know this person, therefore they should get in, therefore they should win. And if you look at TechCrunch Disrupt, right, he went off to do TechCrunch Disrupt, I went off to do launch. TechCrunch Disrupt is considered a joke, it's considered fixed, it's considered rigged, and every year he invests in companies and then he has them win, and then pretends like that didn't happen. And Gartner's written about it. Everybody's written about it. And and he's also gone back to charging startups $10,000 to present there and be, in the demo pit area, and which was specifically why we started TechCrunch 50. The idea was to get rid of payola. So they've gone right back to payola, and it's a rigged game. Those are exact type of things I told him he does not need to do anymore. And he never needed to do them to begin with. I never did those things. Mm-hmm. Try to mentor him and tell him, listen, there's a higher road you can take and you'll be happier in life. But if you take the low road and you abuse your power, you wind up alone and you wind up hated. And I think that's what's playing out for Mike. And then if you take the high road and you try to help people, which is what I've tried to do, and I'm not a perfect person either. I've gotten in fights with people. I've said things about people, including Mike. But I've tried to take the higher road, and I tried to be a better person. And I think having a child and a beautiful wife who just loves me more than anybody and is, incredibly beautiful person inside and out. When you have that joy in your life, it's very hard for you to be bitter. I'm what a kid from Brooklyn who made a bunch of money and people like me, and I get to host a radio show every week. Like I'm on cloud nine. I can't believe that I own a brand new car. When I was a kid, we didn't have, we always bought used cars. The car was always broken down. My dad was always banging the goddamn dashboard, frustrated because his car was always broken. And I bought 3 new cars in my life, 4 new cars in my life. I consider myself successful because I was able to buy 1 new car. My benchmark's very low. And the fact that I have so many friends and deep relationships with people over decades, that's what's valuable in life, right? And I tried to get that through to that guy, and it didn't happen. Now he's alone, living in on an island up in Seattle or whatever. And I think that's the sad part. And, Mike and I were very good friends for a while, and I wish, he whatever's troubling him at some deep level, I wish for him that he goes and talks to somebody about it and conquers his demons. I truly do. It's one thing, there was a period of time when I was very upset that he stole the conference out from under me and treated me so badly, because that was shocking for me on a loyalty basis. But now I look at it, and now that I have a couple years distance and launch has become so successful, I actually don't have any anger about it. I actually just feel very sad for the individual, and I feel like he's very lonely, and I wish he would be a better friend to people and could have more joy in his life. Because my life is, all the people I work with, I respect so much. They, love working for me. I love working with them. And the launch conference is so successful. There's 9 full-time people working on it, and I don't have Mike as a partner constantly trying to compromise the integrity of it. And I've tried to build more and more integrity into the products I build. And I just hope for that individual, he goes and gets counseling and talks to somebody and or if he hasn't already, and just works out what his core issues are, because nobody's perfect in life, right? I would be lying if I was a very driven individual in my early years, and I fought hard, and I felt like winning meant I had to beat the other person. And not only that, I felt like winning meant I had to destroy the other person. So there was a little bit of Mike Arrington, I think, in me, in terms of and that's probably why we were friends, is because we both had this competitive spirit of not only wanting to win, but to destroy the demo conference, right? Like, we would laugh over cigars and steaks with Steve, and I think of those times as good memories. We would laugh about our plans to destroy demo. Like, they were the enemy. They were charging companies $20,000. And then, like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, like, I was not a good teacher. I was flawed in how I taught the guy. And he went off to the dark side, and, I went back to the Jedis. And it's a long, hard, and I hope that arc happens for him. I really, truly do. I hope that Mike realizes, that the people who he had some of the best experiences in his life with, like, Sarah from Pando Daily or Paul Carr, just all these people he's alienated or tried to destroy and really hurt, and not to mention whatever's gone in his personal life, which I don't, want to talk about that because it's a whole legal issue and I don't want to be dragged into court and deal with and have that activity in my life. But he's got to start looking at all of those things and systematically trying to repair them, because life is very short. You have such a short period of time, and this type of anger, I've seen it, and I've had things that I've been angry about in my life, even the breakup with him, that anger eats you up inside. And it really is no benefit to it. There is so much opportunity in the world to do good and to build great products and to have great relationships and to have a family and joy in your life. I really wish he could find a nice person to settle down with, reconnect with his old friends, and just start repairing all the damage he's caused in the world.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something more positive. Let's talk about Inside.com, your newest venture. I know it's good because every time you bring it up, you get visually excited. So give us something. What is it going to be? When's it going to launch? Give us something.
Well, here's what I'll do. I'll pick it up on my phone, and I'll look at it right now. And as you can see, I'm flipping through it, and I've got a huge smile on my face. It's, listen, it's elegantly simple. It will be the one product I am known more for. So in 10 years, if we do this interview again, and I hope we do, this will be what we're talking about is, hey, remember that time, 8 weeks before you launched, you were on my, or 6 weeks before you launched, you were on my show, and we'll have a good laugh about it, and hopefully it'll be very successful. I've got two full-time great growth people, Allison and Steven, working on it on the growth side, and it's definitely the best product I've ever made. And it has shades of Mahalo and Weblogs and Silicon Valley Reporter in it and Launch, and it's the culmination of a career, I think. And it's as a platform, it's just a great place for me to start and really be able to do anything I want as a brand. So I look at it as my, to say CNN wouldn't give it enough credit. So I think it's a platform that I'll be able to grow for many decades.
Yeah. And, it seems like one of the themes of this interview is that failure can lead to some great things. Disrupt didn't work. The Launch Festival does. Mahalo doesn't work. Inside's going to be your biggest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, get knocked down 9 times, get up 10. The Launch Festival right now, just on a comparison, we had 6,000 people there last year. And, Disrupt gets 1,500, and TechCrunch 50 got 1,500, maybe 2,000. So it's 3 or 4 times bigger. But more importantly, in terms of impact, we gave 5,000 scholarships to entrepreneurs who came. And the 50 companies who launched on stage had their lives changed forever. And I invested in the top 2 or 3 and helped them get investments. So we've got this huge legacy going now. And it doesn't make as much money. The TechCrunch 50 conferences Disrupt used to make, $1 million, $500,000, $2 million in profit. Each Disrupt probably makes $2 or $3 million at least in profits, I would say, for AOL, especially now that they're charging $10,000 to entrepreneurs to come to the event, to have a table and that kind of stuff. So since they moved back to a payola model, they're probably, we don't make any money to break even, but I think they probably have lost their way, their soul, and the entrepreneurs are not being helped by it, right? I don't think it's actually helpful to the entrepreneurs. I think it's actually not worth their time. So given all that, the success is even a bigger magnitude. Mahalo, listen, we got to 17 million uniques. It did very well economically for a period of time, but didn't have a lasting value that had that direct relationship with customers. And this will, Inside will. So you are exactly correct. We were optimizing for world dominance in TechCrunch 50, and you can see that went to the dark side with Disrupt, and Launch went to the light side and optimized for helping entrepreneurs. And then on Mahalo, we're optimizing for SEO, and on Inside, we're optimizing for something, I won't say what exactly we're optimizing for, but let's just say we're optimizing for something that is, on the light side of the force as well.
Well, Jason, this has been a great interview. I have one last question for you. What's the best advice you have for any startup that's trying to grow?
Yeah. On a tactical basis, I will say, what I've learned is that if you don't plan for growth, you're probably not going to have it. So you have to plan and strategize. And that correlates with the second thing, which is if nobody's primarily responsible for something, solely responsible for something, then nobody's responsible for it. So if you say, listen, we're all responsible for growing the product, that's in a way saying nobody is. So really, and if you say like, hey, we're all responsible for sales, then nobody's responsible for sales. So there's this sort of teamwork approach can lead to, especially in a small group, a diffusion of responsibility. And what you need to do is design your organization to have some person or persons specifically responsible for specific types of growth and being the truth seekers in the organization. And that's where the growth hacking position, I leave out the hacking part of it because I don't think it's strictly technical. Just being the growth person at a company. Just being the person responsible for growth. So I'll call it growth hacking, we do in our company, but the 2 growth hackers we have, they're responsible for taking all the ideas that grow, compiling them, testing them, studying the results of those tests, and being the voice of truth in the organization to say, I know the God King CEO says we should do this for growth, but the God King CEO was a magazine publisher formerly and a blog publisher. He doesn't understand this, and his techniques no longer work, but these techniques did. And so when I did that in my organization, it freed me up, and it frees up everybody's ego. You take ego out of it. People stop looking at the God King CEO and saying, well, oh, great CEO, what should we do? And then they just start looking at the numbers, and they just take it up a piece of paper and go, well, that worked, and this worked. We should do more of that and less of this. And you just move on and be successful. and everybody feels empowered because you're doing things based on statistics. So it's fine for the CEO or the founder to be saying, like, here's what I want to try first. But eventually, if you really want to scale the organization, I feel you need to say, let's just have an objective way of measuring how to spend money on growth and what is the output of that growth. And I think Y Combinator and Techstars and a lot of these accelerators deserve credit for it because they really did focus on this issue because they realized, hey, now that everybody can build a great product, building a great product is table stakes. What really matters is your ability to grow, right? So when I came up in the industry, the fact that you were able to build any product meant you were a successful entrepreneur because it was so hard to just get a company started and build a product. Then it became, hey, are you able to make a good product, right? Like, yeah, Twitter's a good product, Weblog Zing's a good product, Blogger's a good product, Gawker's a good product, whatever. Flickr's a good product. But then it became, hey, can you make a great product, like a really refined, awesome product? And now, since everybody can start a company, build a good product, build a great product, build an exceptional product, it's getting easier and easier to do those things. All that's left is growth. So I think that's the final piece of the puzzle for startups. I don't know where it goes after that. But I do think we're sort of reaching that moment where growth is the key.
Yeah. Well, Jason, that's great advice to end on. Again, thank you so much for coming on Growth Hacker TV.
My pleasure. Peace.